The early morning sun spilled softly across the narrow street, brushing the faded awning of a little shop that had seen better days. The paint was chipped, the sign above the door tilted slightly, and the bell that jingled when someone entered had a faint, uneven tone. Yet inside, there was warmth, an aura of care that even the grayest walls couldn't hide. The shop wasn't grand or flashy. It never drew attention from the bustling crowd passing by. But for those who knew, it was a sanctuary of simple things: freshly baked bread, steaming cups of tea, and the faint smell of vanilla that lingered in the air. Mira, the woman who ran the shop, moved through the narrow aisles with practiced ease. Her hands were calloused from years of kneading dough and polishing shelves, yet they were gentle as she arranged jars of preserves, stacked biscuits, and poured hot tea into delicate cups. Mira was small, not physically imposing, but there was a quiet strength in her posture and a softness in her smile that made people feel at ease. She wore an apron over a faded blouse and a skirt that had seen countless washes, yet she carried herself with dignity. She didn't have much, but what she did have, she gave fully. Every day, as the city awakened in its usual chaos, the honking of cars, the distant chatter of street vendors, the occasional barking dog, Mira noticed him. He was small, perhaps 10 or 11 years old, with eyes that seemed far older than his years. His clothes were worn, threadbare in places, patched up with whatever scraps he could find. His hair was a tangled mess, as though no one had combed it for days, yet there was something about him that drew Mira's attention, a quiet resilience, a spark of hope tucked behind his guarded expression. At first, he only lingered at the edge of the shop, hesitant to step closer. He would peek from behind a lamppost or a parked bicycle, his wide eyes fixed on Mira as she moved among the shelves. He never spoke much, and when she tried to engage him, he would simply nod or offer a shy smile, retreating quickly if anyone approached. Mira didn't know his story, didn't ask. She didn't need to. She simply saw a child who was hungry, and her heart compelled her to act. It began with small gestures. A slice of bread left on the counter, a cup of warm tea placed discreetly where he could see it. Slowly, day by day, the boy grew bolder. He would linger longer, sometimes daring to step inside, brushing the dirt from his knees before offering a hesitant, "Thank you." Mira never judged him. She never questioned where he had come from or why he was on the streets. To her, those questions were irrelevant. What mattered was the small humanity they shared in those fleeting moments. One chilly morning, Mira found him sitting on the curb outside her shop, shivering in a thin jacket that had long since lost its warmth. She carried a steaming mug of tea and a warm sandwich, the aroma soft and inviting, and set it gently beside him. "Here," she said softly, kneeling to meet his eyes. "Eat before it gets cold." The boy looked at her, a flicker of surprise crossing his face. Then he nodded, his small hands trembling as he reached for the food. He ate slowly, savoring each bite as though he hadn't tasted a proper meal in days. Mira watched him quietly, her heart tightening. Do you like it?" she asked, trying to keep her voice light. He nodded again, shyly. "Thank you," he whispered, barely audible over the distant hum of traffic. "You're welcome," Mira replied. "You can sit inside if it's too cold. Just don't make a mess." And that was how it began. The daily ritual. The boy would come, sometimes at the same time each morning, sometimes later if he had been wandering the streets. Mira always had something for him, sometimes leftovers, sometimes freshly baked bread, sometimes just a comforting smile. In return, he offered her stories from the streets, little observations about the people he saw, the things he noticed that adults overlooked. He was sharp, clever, and endlessly curious, despite the hardships that weighed him down. The other shopkeepers in the area didn't understand Mira's kindness. Some grumbled, calling the boy a troublemaker or a thief. Others whispered behind her back, suggesting she was wasting her time, that she had enough struggles of her own without feeding a stranger. But Mira ignored them. She had learned early in life that kindness wasn't about recognition. It was about action. Days turned into weeks. Mira found herself looking forward to the boy's arrival. His presence brought a strange comfort, a reminder that even in the smallest acts, life could hold warmth. She began leaving a small plate for him on a stool near the counter, so he could sit quietly inside when the weather turned harsh. Sometimes, when business was slow, she would join him, sharing tea and stories, laughing softly at the small jokes he made. And every day, without fail, he returned her kindness with a smile that could light up the dimmest room. But life, as Mira knew, never stayed still. One afternoon, as she was arranging a stack of bread loaves near the window, she noticed a figure across the street. A man, sharply dressed in a dark suit, leaning against a black car, watching her intently. She felt a chill crawl down her spine. He wasn't a customer. He didn't approach. He simply observed, his eyes fixed on her small shop, on the little boy who had just walked past. Mira frowned, curiosity mixing with unease. She watched him for several minutes, and then, as suddenly as he appeared, he was gone. The boy arrived soon after, oblivious to the stranger. He took his usual seat by the counter, carefully removing his worn jacket and placing it over his thin shoulders. Mira poured him tea and handed him a sandwich, trying to push the image of the man out of her mind. "Everything okay?" the boy asked, noticing the slight tension in her expression. Mira smiled, forcing warmth into her voice. "Yes, just imagining things." But she knew it wasn't her imagination. Someone had been watching her, and she didn't know why. That evening, after closing the shop and counting the meager earnings of the day, Mira sat on the worn stool behind the counter, exhausted but content. She thought about the boy, about the small world they had built together in that little shop. She didn't know what the future held. She never did. But she knew one thing with absolute certainty. She would continue feeding him, continue offering a slice of warmth and humanity in a city that often overlooked both. As she locked the door and stepped into the cool evening air, a soft rustling sound caught her attention. She turned instinctively, her heart skipping a beat. Across the street, a sleek black car had parked silently. The driver remained inside, motionless. Mira's breath caught in her throat. The boy appeared beside her, holding a small piece of bread he had saved for later. He looked at the car, then at her, his eyes wide and uncomprehending. "Do you see that?" he whispered. Mira nodded slowly, her mind racing. She didn't know who was watching or why. All she knew was that life, as gentle and simple as it had been these past weeks, was about to change. And somehow, she had a feeling that the boy, the little boy she had fed every day, the one who had become a quiet anchor in her lonely life, was at the center of it. The city's lights flickered on, reflecting in the puddles from an earlier drizzle, casting long shadows across the street. Mira's shop, small and humble, seemed almost insignificant against the looming unknown. Yet in that moment, it was a beacon of kindness, of hope, of small but powerful gestures that could ripple far beyond what anyone could imagine. And somewhere, in the darkened street, eyes watched her. Waiting. The days that followed were a strange mix of routine and quiet tension. Mira went about her mornings with the same devotion she always had, kneading dough until it glistened with warmth, arranging freshly baked pastries on worn wooden shelves, and humming softly as she worked. Yet there was an unspoken awareness now, a subtle weight pressing against her consciousness that someone was watching. Every shadow across the street, every lingering glance from passing strangers sent a ripple of unease through her. But the boy, the one who had come to depend on her kindness, was a constant. He had taken to calling her Aunt Mira, a name that made her heart ache in the most tender way. He didn't know the comfort of family, yet in those 2 words he had given her a place in his small, fragile world. She treasured it more than she could articulate. Each morning he arrived with the same careful caution. His movements were deliberate, almost ritualistic, brushing dirt from his shoes, pulling his thin jacket closer around him, and always hesitating just long enough for Mira to catch the shadow of a smile. She had started preparing a little extra for him, a plate of fruit when she could afford it, or a slice of her special chocolate cake that melted in the mouth and left a trace of joy lingering in the air. He was clever, sharper than most children his age. He noticed everything. The way Mira flinched when a car door slammed, the subtle tension in her posture when someone lingered outside, the small creases in her forehead that told stories she didn't speak aloud. One day, as he took a bite of a pastry, he asked softly, "Aunt Mira, why do you always help me?" Mira paused, kneading the dough she had set aside, her fingers working almost absent-mindedly. "Because someone helped me when I needed it," she said finally. "And because no one should go hungry, not when it's in my power to do something about it." The boy nodded, chewing thoughtfully. "I used to think people only helped if they wanted something back, but you don't. You just give." Her chest tightened at his words. "Sometimes giving is the only way to make the world a little better," she replied. Over time, the boy grew bolder. He would linger inside the shop even when it was crowded, sharing small stories about the city streets, the hidden corners, the discarded treasures, the friends he had lost and the friends he had found. Mira listened with rapt attention, offering advice when she could, or simply a comforting smile when words were unnecessary. She found herself learning as much from him as he did from her. Yet, the quiet moments between them were always tinged with the lingering shadow of the stranger who had been watching her. Mira couldn't shake the feeling that her small acts of kindness had drawn attention beyond what she could see. She had learned long ago that the world was unpredictable. Goodness often attracted curiosity, sometimes even danger. One particularly cold morning, the boy arrived with a torn notebook clutched in his hands. His eyes were bright with urgency, and he practically ran to Mira's side. "Aunt Mira! Aunt Mira, look!" he whispered, holding up the notebook like a treasure. Mira lowered her teacup and leaned closer, her curiosity piqued. "What is it?" He opened the notebook, revealing pages filled with careful drawings and notes. "I've been keeping track," he said. "The people who watch, they come every few days. Always black cars. Always far away, but always watching the shop. I think they're waiting for something." Mira's heart thudded in her chest. She had suspected it, but hearing it confirmed from the boy's perspective made it far more real. She took a deep breath, steadying herself. "Thank you for telling me. We'll be careful." The boy's eyes searched hers. "Do you think they're dangerous?" She shook her head gently, masking the anxiety that gnawed at her. "I don't know, but we'll watch each other. We're a team now." From that day, their mornings became a careful dance between normalcy and vigilance. Mira continued running her shop, selling bread, tea, and small comfort foods to loyal customers, all while keeping a discreet eye on the street. The boy, for his part, became more observant, often pointing out unusual movements or noting the arrival of unfamiliar faces. Together, they navigated the precarious balance between ordinary life and the unknown. Despite the tension, moments of pure joy persisted. One afternoon, Mira surprised the boy with a small, improvised picnic outside the shop. She spread a checkered cloth on the sidewalk, placed a few sandwiches and pastries in the center, and invited him to sit. The sun warmed their backs, and for a brief time, the shadow of fear lifted. "You know," Mira said, handing him a slice of cake, "one day, someone will look back and remember that we didn't just survive. We cared. The boy's eyes glimmered with a mix of admiration and hope. I hope I can be like you someday. You already are, Mira whispered, ruffling his hair. But life rarely allowed long moments of peace. One busy afternoon, a regular customer, the local school teacher, Mr. Phillips, stopped by with concern etched across his face. Mira, the boy, he began cautiously. You've been helping him, yes? I don't want you to get hurt. Some people notice good deeds, and not all of them mean well. Mira nodded, appreciating his concern without letting it shake her resolve. I know. I'm careful, and he's worth it. That evening, after the last customer left, Mira and the boy sat quietly, sipping tea. The street was bathed in the golden glow of sunset, shadows stretching long across the pavement. Do you think they'll ever come? The boy asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Mira set her cup down, her gaze distant. I think if they do, we'll be ready. And if they don't, we'll keep living the way we always have. One day at a time. The boy nodded, comforted by her confidence, though he didn't fully understand the complexities of the world beyond the shop. He only knew that Mira's small acts of love and courage had created a sanctuary he could rely on, even if only for a few hours each day. And then, as twilight fell and the city lights flickered to life, a subtle, almost imperceptible sound reached their ears. The low hum of engines, distant but growing steadily closer. Mira's heart skipped a beat, and the boy stiffened beside her. Across the street, in the fading light, 4 sleek SUVs glided silently into position. Their polished exteriors reflected the glow of the street lamps, making them look like predators stalking quietly. Mira's breath caught in her throat. The boy looked at her, eyes wide with awe and fear. They're here, he whispered. Mira nodded, a strange mix of dread and resolve settling over her. This was the moment she had sensed was coming, the moment when her small world, built on kindness and courage, would be tested. She took the boy's hand in hers, squeezing it gently. Whatever happens, she said softly, we face it together. The SUVs stopped directly in front of the shop. The engines cut out, leaving only the quiet hum of the city around them. Mira and the boy watched in tense silence, waiting for the next move, unaware that the lives of both would change forever in ways they could never have imagined. The evening air hung heavy with anticipation as Mira and the boy stood behind the shop counter, peering out through the glass. The 4 SUVs, dark and imposing, sat idly on the street like silent sentinels. Their polished surfaces reflected the neon signs of nearby shops, throwing fractured light across the pavement. Mira's fingers tightened around the boy's hand, grounding them both in the moment. Time seemed to stretch, each second elongated by the pounding of her heartbeat. The boy's small body quivered beside hers, and Mira felt an ache deep in her chest. Not just worry, but the fear of what life might demand of them next. Then, the driver of the first SUV stepped out, a tall man in a tailored black suit, sunglasses still perched on his face despite the fading light. He moved with precision, an almost military-like grace, and carried an air of authority that made Mira instinctively step back. One by one, the other occupants followed, 2 men and a woman, all impeccably dressed, their eyes scanning the street and the shop as though searching for something, or someone. Mira's mind raced. Who were these people? Why had they come? And most importantly, what did they want with the boy? Before she could form a plan, the tall man approached the shop's entrance. His movements were slow, deliberate, almost theatrical, as though he wanted her to see the control he held over the situation. Good evening, he said, his voice smooth, calm, yet carrying a subtle authority that made it clear he was used to command. "Are you Mira?" Mira swallowed hard, her voice catching in her throat. "Yes, that's me. Can I help you?" He studied her for a moment, then nodded slightly. "I believe you already have." Mira frowned, uncertain. I don't understand." The man glanced toward the boy, who shrank slightly behind Mira. "You've been feeding him, caring for him, protecting him." Mira's heart skipped. "Yes, he needed help. That's all." The man's expression softened just a fraction, a flicker of something human behind the carefully maintained mask of authority. "He is very important." The words hit Mira like a punch to the stomach. Important? The boy? He was just a child, scrawny and worn from the streets, but in this moment, he became something else entirely, someone of significance beyond her understanding. "I don't know what you mean," she said cautiously. "He's just a kid who needed a meal." The man nodded slowly, almost approvingly. "Exactly. And because of you, he has survived. He has thrived. For that we are grateful." The woman in the group, her hair pulled into a sleek ponytail, stepped forward. She held out a hand toward the boy. "Hello, young man. My name is Victoria. May we talk to you for a moment?" The boy hesitated, glancing at Mira. She knelt to meet his eyes, giving him the courage he needed. "It's okay," she whispered. "You can trust them, I think." He took a small step forward, curiosity warring with caution. Victoria smiled warmly, crouching to his level. "We're not here to hurt you. We've been looking for you for a long time. Your family. They've been searching for you." Mira's breath caught. "Family?" she whispered. "Yes," Victoria continued, her voice gentle. "You were separated from your parents when you were very young. They didn't know where you were. Until now." The boy's eyes widened, and Mira felt tears sting her own. This tiny human who had endured so much was now on the cusp of a life-changing revelation. The world outside had been cruel, indifferent, but the world inside the shop, the world she had built for him with care and kindness, had prepared him for this moment. The tall man stepped closer. "We need to take him with us. He will be safe. He will be cared for, but he cannot stay here." Mira's instinct was to protest, to shield him, as she had every day since he appeared on her doorstep. I've been taking care of him. You can't just—" The boy interrupted her, his small hand reaching for hers. "Aunt Mira, I want to see them." Mira's chest tightened. She nodded, fighting back the lump in her throat. "Then, we'll do this together." Victoria extended her hand to the boy, who took it hesitantly. The other adults nodded toward Mira, silently acknowledging the bond she had formed and the role she had played in keeping him alive. As they walked toward the SUVs, Mira felt a strange mix of pride and heartbreak. She had been a lifeline, a protector, a family substitute. But now her role was shifting. She had given him the courage to face a future she could only imagine. The tall man spoke once more before the boy entered the SUV. "Your kindness saved him. Remember that. Whatever comes next, you were the reason he survived this long." Mira watched as the vehicles slowly pulled away, the boy inside waving back at her with a tentative smile. Her heart ached, but she felt a deep, unshakable satisfaction. She had made a difference. Her small shop, her simple acts of love had altered the course of someone's life forever. Once the SUVs disappeared into the distance, Mira returned to her shop, sitting behind the counter as silence enveloped the space. The weight of the evening pressed down on her, but she also felt a quiet, radiant joy. She had been part of something extraordinary. As she cleaned the counter and wiped away crumbs from the day, a small note caught her eye. It had been slipped under the door, written in elegant, looping handwriting. "Your heart has changed the world. Thank you. Family." Tears blurred her vision as she held the note to her chest. She realized then that her life, small, quiet, ordinary as it had seemed, was capable of rippling outward in ways she had never imagined. And somewhere, far away, the boy she had nurtured, protected, and loved was stepping into a life he had only dreamed of, because of her. The shop felt emptier than ever. Mira swept the floor, her movements automatic, but her mind wandered to the boy, now safe with his family, stepping into a life she could only imagine. The note they had left behind remained in her hand, soft and fragile, like the weight of her own heart. For days, Mira replayed the events in her mind. The fear when the SUVs arrived, the boy's hesitant steps toward strangers, the warmth in their smiles when he finally trusted them. She realized something profound. Her small acts of care, feeding him, listening to him, letting him feel safe, had consequences far beyond the walls of her little shop. Word of her kindness began to spread. The local newspaper ran a short piece about the woman who fed a homeless boy every day, and soon messages poured in. Letters, phone calls, even strangers stopping by to thank her for setting an example of compassion in a world that often seemed indifferent. Mira felt a strange mix of embarrassment and pride. She had never sought recognition. All she had wanted was to help a child in need. Yet the ripple of her actions reminded her that even the smallest kindness could grow into something monumental. One morning, a young woman entered the shop, carrying a bouquet of flowers. "Are you Mira?" she asked shyly. "I just wanted to meet the person who who helped that boy. He told his family about you. They call you his angel." Mira's throat tightened. I didn't do much. The woman interrupted gently. "You did more than you realize. You gave him hope. You gave him courage. And now, people like me, we want to help others too, because of you." It was then that Mira began to understand the true power of her actions. Her small shop, once a quiet corner of the city, had become a beacon, a place where kindness was not just offered, but multiplied. In the evenings, Mira often walked past the park where she first met the boy. She imagined him playing in the sunlight, laughing freely, no longer burdened by hunger or fear. A tear would escape her eyes, but a smile always followed. Her own life began to shift as well. Customers came not just for bread or tea, but to hear her stories, to learn how a single act of compassion could transform lives. Mira started small community projects, a free meal once a week for the homeless, mentoring local children, offering a safe space for anyone in need. Her shop became more than a business. It became a sanctuary. One afternoon, as Mira handed a sandwich to a young man who reminded her of the boy, she noticed something remarkable. The city felt warmer, lighter. Strangers were kinder to one another. Conversations in the streets carried more empathy. She realized that one small act of kindness had created a chain reaction, touching countless lives she would never meet. And yet, in the quiet moments, Mira still felt the ache of absence. The boy's laughter no longer echoed in the shop, and she missed his presence deeply. But she understood now that love was not possession. It was giving freely, knowing that the heart could survive and thrive beyond your own arms. That evening, Mira opened the shop late, as she often did, and gazed out at the streetlights reflecting off the pavement. A soft breeze carried the scent of freshly baked bread, mingling with the distant sounds of children playing. She felt a profound sense of peace. Then, a sleek black SUV slowly drove past the shop, pausing just long enough for Mira to notice a familiar small hand waving from the back seat. Her eyes widened as the vehicle disappeared into the distance. A smile broke across her face, one of recognition, wonder, and hope. The boy, her boy, was thriving. And somewhere deep inside, Mira knew this was only the beginning. Her heart felt full, but not complete. Something was coming, something that would test the limits of her courage, her kindness, and the very essence of her humanity. Mira was closing her shop on a quiet Thursday evening, the streets bathed in golden sunlight fading into dusk. She wiped the counter one last time, humming softly, lost in her thoughts of the boy, now safely with his family. The city seemed peaceful, ordinary, but Mira felt a sense of anticipation she couldn't explain. Then, the rumble of engines broke the calm. 4 sleek SUVs rolled to a stop in front of her small shop. Their polished exteriors gleamed under the streetlights, and the tinted windows hinted at the people inside. Important, influential, and unknown. Mira froze, unsure whether to panic or greet them. The driver's door of the first SUV opened, and a man in a crisp suit stepped out. His presence commanded attention, not menacing but unmistakably significant. Behind him, 2 women and another man emerged from the other vehicles. "Are you Mira?" the man asked, his voice warm but firm. Mira nodded, gripping the edge of the counter. "We've heard about what you did," he continued. "Feeding a homeless boy every day, helping him when no one else would. That kind of compassion, it doesn't go unnoticed." Mira blinked, confused. I didn't do it for recognition. You did it because it mattered," the woman interrupted gently, holding out an envelope. "And now, we want to help you make an even bigger difference." Mira hesitated, then took the envelope. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Inside were documents. Plans for a foundation, funding for a community center, a proposal to expand her shop into a hub for helping children in need. Tears blurred her vision. "Why, me?" Mira whispered. The man smiled. "Because you acted when no one else did. You showed courage, kindness, and unwavering humanity. The world needs more people like you. We're here to amplify what you started." Suddenly, a familiar face appeared in the crowd. The boy, older now, dressed neatly, his eyes bright and full of gratitude. He ran toward her, hugging her tightly. "You saved me," he said simply. "You believed in me when no one else did." Mira's heart ached with joy. She realized the truth. Her small acts of kindness had not only saved a life, they had sparked a movement, inspired countless others, and brought hope to a world that often seemed cruel and indifferent. The SUVs and their occupants weren't just offering help. They were validating every sacrifice, every sleepless night, every moment she had worried if what she was doing was enough. It was a recognition of her humanity, her courage, and the ripple effect of her compassion. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Mira's shop became the headquarters of a growing initiative to feed and support homeless children and families. Volunteers flocked to her, inspired by her story. Local media covered her work, highlighting the extraordinary impact of one person's daily acts of kindness. Yet, amid the fame and attention, Mira stayed humble. She remembered the quiet moments, the boy's shy smile, the note left behind, the feeling of simply giving without expectation. That remained at the heart of everything she did. One evening, as she watched children laughing and playing in the newly built community center, Mira reflected on the journey. From the first day she had handed the boy a sandwich to the day 4 SUVs pulled up to her shop, everything had led to this moment. A moment of pure, unfiltered humanity, a testament to the power of compassion. And in that moment, Mira understood something fundamental. The world could be changed, not by grand gestures alone, but by consistent, courageous acts of kindness. One person's heart could inspire countless others, and even the smallest actions could ripple outward to touch lives beyond imagination. As the sun set behind the city skyline, Mira looked out from her shop, the boy by her side, volunteers bustling around, and her heart swelled with a profound sense of fulfillment. She had not just helped one child, she had sparked a movement, and the world would never be the same. Her story, once quiet and unnoticed, had become a legend of hope, courage, and humanity. And somewhere in the distance, the hum of engines reminded her that life always had surprises, always had challenges, but with kindness as the guide, miracles were always possible.